Welcome to this session of the annual meeting. Because of time zones, as you all know, we've had two sessions. So we had our practice run this morning at 2 a.m. my local time, and it was a great session. We really enjoyed the participation. As I've said at events of ours before, the golden lining of the COVID crisis has been this ability for all of us from different parts of the world to come together. So these meetings are very well attended. In terms of the agenda, I've got some opening remarks for you, which will take a few minutes. I'll walk through those with you, and then we'll open it for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions at all, please do note them in the chat box. We'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. After that, we'll hand it over to Jeremy, and he'll walk us through the resolutions and invite others of us to talk about the resolutions and again, answer any questions that you have. And then on to the exciting part of the agenda, we have Nick is going to be bringing us up to date on the competency framework, and I found it very enlightening this morning, Nick. So I'm looking forward to hearing it again. Then on to the major event of all annual meetings, which is the announcement of the results of NSPC's work with the candidates for board members and chair. And Soren will announce those for us, and then back to me for the closing. So in terms of starting, I cannot help but be amazed as I was preparing for this. I walked through again the annual report, which you've all had access to, and it's just such a reinforcement of the activities that have taken place during this past year. So in spite of the restrictions that we've had upon ourselves, the volunteers of Icmci have just been amazing in terms of all of that work. So do keep this at hand. It's a great document. It's formatted so that you can use it with third-party organizations. It's upbeat, and it tells a wonderful tale of excellent work. So I just want to personally thank all of the volunteers at the committee level and at the board level that do the work that they do. I'd also like to thank the institutes because, again, I've had an opportunity to be present at more conferences of institutes than I think probably any chair before, simply because of the availability to dial in on Zoom or whatever your medium might be. And it's been absolutely enjoyable for me to participate in that way and to see all of the work firsthand that you are doing to advance the profession of management consulting within your geography. And while I'm saying thanks, I cannot ignore our secretariat. Rima and Husseima are both on this call. They've done yeoman work. I guess I shouldn't use that. That's not very gender appropriate. They've done amazing work over the past, well, since they've been in the role, and they've kept me on the straight and narrow and keep us all coordinated. And I think probably one of the more challenging jobs is to oversee all of the work of the committees, because that is how we implement strategy. So implementing strategy through a volunteer workforce does have its ups and downs and challenges. So you do a great job of keeping us all in line. The reflections that I've had on these past 3 years have been interesting ones. I was elected at 2018 in Milan, and then attended and chaired the annual meeting of delegates in 2019 in the Bahamas. And then since then, it's been virtual pretty much. So it's a very different kind of a chairmanship. But even in the Bahamas, when we were meeting, we were talking about disruption coming to management consulting. And there's no question that COVID has accelerated that pace of disruption. Not unlike it's accelerated many different things in the environment in terms of what we do and how we react within our own communities. There's 4 main drivers for that. I've outlined them in the written report, so you can dial in, you can review them there if you'd like more information. But I'd just like to point out the four key ones, because they impact on our work as a global organization, and they certainly impact on your work as an institute. So the first one is just around client orientation. Everything that we know about, all the research, all of the statistics are showing that clients are thinking differently about how they engage management consulting services. They're not going for the great big projects anymore. They're going more for the bite-sized projects, and they're implementing them in pieces. And they're becoming more discriminating about who they will bring in to support them in that work. So often, as opposed to just the typical, let's hire our management consulting firm that's on retainer, they will hire in-house resources. They will find people in other places, or they do bring in management consultants, but they will search for the person that has the particular expertise that they want. So that creates challenges for us in terms of visibility as a management consulting profession. Not one that's insurmountable, but it's something that is disrupting the way in which business has traditionally been done. The second one is that in a general sense, over the last decade, perhaps the last 2 decades, the image of professional services generally is dropping. So the way in which people generally deal with professional services is changing. If you think about how we dealt with our medical doctor in the not too distant past, the word was kind of law. You go to the doctor, you tell them what the symptoms are, and the doctor prescribes, and away you go. Now people are much more likely to challenge or to go into the doctor's office with the diagnosis ready and say, just write me the prescription. I know what's wrong with me. So that kind of thing is applying to all of the services in terms of how people have access to knowledge and do self-diagnose. For us as management consultants, that creates an issue in terms of client organizations diagnosing themselves at the symptomatic level and instead of the root cause level. So this is something else that we really need to work on in terms of helping them understand the value that the professional management consultant can bring. The third one is the access to networking, and this has more of an impact on the institutes than the individual management consultants. People who are new to the profession realize that they can network almost infinitely all around the globe through all of the social media platforms that are out there. It used to be, if one wanted to be a consultant, you'd go to your institute, and that's where you could find the people that were the best in that field and that you could learn from and share information from and network with. So not so much anymore. And this creates a requirement for institutes to think creatively about how to invite and attract new members to the profession into the organization. And the fourth one is what I call the Uberization of consulting. The availability of specialized services is growing dramatically. Just over the last few years, the number of online sites that match business requirements to specialized expertise has grown to 300 different websites. So if a client organization, my first point, is looking for specialized expertise, often they call themselves consultants, sort of the self-proclaimed gurus. They can go there to find the people that they need to do the support. So our job then does become really reinforced in pretty much all of these of how important it is to ensure that there's an understanding of the differentiation between one who says they're a consultant and what the profession of management consulting is. There's a term that's come up and is coming up increasingly. It's called VUCA. That's an acronym, VUCA. And it addresses the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity, sorry, I'm trying to remember my words here, and the ambiguity that we face in this world. Because of COVID, it's become increasingly popular, but when I looked into it, it was first coined back in 1987. So back in 87, people were saying we were living in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous situation. Well, we can tell them about volatility and complexity now based on our experiences. So it really does reinforce that we as management consultants need to continue to think about and stay ahead of the curve in terms of the change that's taking place in our communities. So as a result of all of this change, there's some who would say that there isn't a role for institutes. Management consultants can manage themselves and network with themselves and sort of get themselves trained. But to me, that there's nothing that can be further from the truth. When we have ambiguous times, when we have complexity, when there's the pace of change is increasing, we as management consultants need to band together so that we can network with each other, and so that we can learn from each other, and so that we can share best practices, and in turn be even better consultants with our client organizations. So the role of the institutes is there. It's absolutely necessary. But I know also institutes are thinking deeply about what it means to be an institute. How does one position oneself as an organization when those who are new to the profession don't recognize the importance or the predominance of the institute? There's a lot of work going on in institutes to think about that repositioning. Our 2020 onwards task force met with all of the institutes to look at what's happening, and that report will be coming and going into our next strategy document, which will take place next year. So disruption is coming, but my bottom line and my closing part of my remarks is that for me, the future is bright for the profession of management consulting. While the pace of change is increasing, and I think we can learn to live with and have to learn to live with consistent change, organizations also are facing that change in a consistent way. And as change continues to evolve, there's increasing requirement for those who have cross-sector, cross-industry experience to provide support and insights to client organizations to help them leverage successes in other areas. While disruption might be here to stay, it's also true that management consulting as a profession is able to provide that diagnostic capability to organizations that they're often not able to do themselves. I remember before I was ever a management consultant, we engaged a design and a global organization where I was the project manager. And I was totally amazed with the recommendations that came back, because I would never in a million years have been able to come up with those recommendations from inside the organization, because I didn't have that objectivity. I didn't have the underlying methodology. So we do have that value to bring, and we need to continue to work within our institutes and reach out to the public to reinforce that. And as part of that work, we are, you'll be seeing in resolution number 5, which is coming up shortly, Jeremy will lead us through this. We are, as a board of directors, going to be looking at what are the stakeholder organizations around the world where Icmci could have more of an impact, more interaction with, that can create that funnel for membership and to support our institutes in that way. So of course we support the institutes, but there may be other ways with other types of global organizations where we can support that even further. So the bottom line is that collaboration is the key. It's at events like this. It's at events like this conference that we just attended. It's like the conferences that you put on in your institutes, where we are able to stay ahead of the curve and ensure that those change programs that we have in place, that ability to advise our clients, stays as fresh and as leading edge as absolutely possible. So this is my last address to you as chair. It's been an absolutely amazing time. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I want to thank you all for your support over this past year, because it's been quite a journey, but I think we are advancing the profession. We're moving in the right direction, and I will be staying on the board for the next 3 years, so I have that opportunity to continue to contribute through work at the board. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Are there any questions or comments on my address, or any questions about any of the materials that were distributed? Okay, what I'd like you to do is continue to think about whether there is anything that's an open question or a comment. We can do comments in the chats as well. And while you're thinking about it, I'll hand it over to Jeremy to start walking us through the resolutions. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Dwight, for that introduction. That's great. My task in this meeting is quite routine, really. As secretary, I need to present to you the various resolutions that we've put forward, and I'll go through them now. we have an electronic voting system, which I'm sure you're aware of. You'll have read the email, I hope, that was sent out yesterday by Kazema. Thank you, Kazema, for doing that. You all should have received instructions on how to cast your vote. And the voting process is, we're doing our best to mirror the process that we would follow in a meeting itself. What we can't do is have a show of hands. Unfortunately, we don't have the right technology to allow people just to press a button and have live voting. So what we've done, you'll be aware that this meeting has been split into two parts. We had one this morning to appeal to people in time zones to the east of the world, in the Southeast Asia and so on. And this one is timed to be more convenient for people in the Americas and Europe. What we've done is we've kept the meeting open for a 24-hour period until first thing tomorrow morning in UTC time, so that everybody has the opportunity to cast their vote during the meeting. And there's a link in the chat window that Kazema's put there. Thank you, Kazema. That if you want to cast your vote and you've lost the email or can't find it, the first thing you need to do is log on to the Icmci website with your personal login details. And again, I hope that you've all got those. And if you haven't, then please separately email Kazema or Rima, and they'll be able to help you with that. Once you've logged in, click on the link that's shown in the chat window or the one that was provided in the email to you, and you'll go to a page that allows you to vote for all the various resolutions. The voting lists all of the resolutions, so you might want to wait until we've discussed them all before you cast your vote, because if you vote for just a few and then close, unfortunately we have to then undo the vote and ask you to do it again, because it's only valid for one visit, if you like. So any questions about the voting, please put those in the link and in the chat window, and we'll do our best to answer those. I hope it's quite straightforward. It worked quite well this morning. And what we're hoping to do is receive enough votes for all the resolutions to be counted by the time the meeting officially ends at 6 o'clock or so tomorrow morning UTC time. We did find a problem, and there is a message in the chat window about this, with some people this morning who had problems casting their votes, and it's all to do with clearing your browser cache. If you find there's a problem with that, please get in touch with the Kazema, who will help you through that. And thanks, Kazema, for putting that up. That's great. So let me take you through the various resolutions that we're proposing. There's a list of these on our first slide. There are 6 resolutions that we are proposing this year. If we could roll through that slide, please. The first one is basically is to accept the board report. So I hope that you've all had the opportunity at least to read through that report and watch the videos that accompanied the various documents. It's a matter of routine that every year we produce a report with all the details of what's been happening. And we hope that you'll find that that's an acceptable report and that you'll vote to indeed accept it. Kazema or Rima, can you scroll the slides through, please, so we can see these? Just one, thank you, that's great. So the first one is about the board report. There's then a special report by the Treasurer, and at that point I'm going to ask Jan Villam, our Treasurer, to comment on the Treasurer and the Treasurer's report and the budget for next year, 2022-23. You'll be aware that we do a rolling budget now for 2 years to avoid the situation that exists, I believe, in the United States, that they if you run up to the end and they haven't agreed the budget, then everything stops, which seems rather strange, but some countries do it that way. We try and avoid that by having a rolling budget where we set 2 years at once, so that you're aware as delegates of our current year, but also a year ahead. And I'll get Jan Villam as treasurer to talk you through that as well. We then have a special resolution to allow us to appoint a banking compliance officer, and I'll give more details about this at the time. This is because we need to change our banking arrangements, which again, Jan Villam will help you and help everybody understand why that is. And we need to appoint, we need to ask your permission as delegates, your authority to appoint a banking compliance officer to manage our banking arrangements in Switzerland, they're going to be. The fifth resolution is about a review that Dwight mentioned about our stakeholders. We've decided as a board that we need to review the way that we deal with global stakeholders, and I'll talk a bit more about this in a moment. And therefore, in the coming year, 2021 to 22, the board is going to undertake a stakeholder review to determine the best way to do this. And what we want to do is alert you to this as delegates, that this is going to be happening, and seek your support for carrying out such a review. We haven't got any answers yet, and when we discussed this morning, we got lots of really positive and good input on issues that might need to be dealt with when we cover this project. So when we discuss this, obviously you can please make a contribution. If you have any questions, we can deal with that. The final resolution is to update the bylaws to allow us explicitly to have electronic meetings and electronic voting. The way the bylaws are currently written doesn't really permit this. And we found last year that we did it and it worked well. So we've decided that we should update the bylaws so that going forward, we can always use this approach. Because actually it's been a real positive, message that our annual meeting last year and the one this year has had a very high participation from delegates. We have, I can see 31 participants here in this meeting. Obviously that includes board members, and we had 40 something this morning, which should be most of the delegates that we have on our books, which is fantastic. We know that the physical meeting is great. We all love to travel around the world, but actually it's very expensive. It's not very sustainable. And therefore, our democracy suffers, we believe, because only a few delegates can often make it to these meetings, whereas online, we find we get a really high attendance, and we're very grateful for you for participating. And to make sure we have a proper democracy, we want to keep doing it that way. So those are our 6 resolutions. What I'd like to do is just take each one in turn briefly and answer any questions that anyone might have, having read the resolutions. We can go ahead and you can cast your vote. So the first one is the board report. As I mentioned, that's fairly routine. If we can go forward to that, please. Thank you. So the resolution is very straightforward: to accept the board report. We hope that you'll all be comfortable with that, be happy with it, and vote to accept that report. It's been circulated, but if anybody has any questions about it or comments that you'd like to raise, now's the time either to do it in person. So if you can raise your hand in the window, we can invite you in to speak. Or if you have any questions, please type them into the chat window, and they're all being recorded, and we can respond to them either at the time now or later if we can't get round to them all. So I can see while I've been talking that nobody wants to raise any questions about the board report. So it was obviously perfectly clear. Well done, Dwight. That's fantastic. So I hope that you'll find it in your hearts to vote for the board report when you log on to cast your votes. So thank you for that one. The second resolution then is the Treasurer's report. So I'm going to hand over briefly to Jan Willem Kradolfer, our treasurer, to just give us the update, a brief sort of summary on the treasurer's report, and then to stay on the line and discuss the budget in the same way. So if you have questions as this goes along, please put them in the chat window or raise your hand and we'll invite you in to ask them. So Jan Willem, can you step in and give us a few minutes on a summary on the treasurer's report, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. And I really want to thank everybody who worked hard to have me present you the treasurer's report. And if I focus on the treasurer's report, I will highlight 3 topics. First topic is that we have had our audit, and the conclusion of the audit, which was successful. And thank you so much for the new auditor and for the hard work done by our secretariat. The conclusion was that we still are a financially healthy international organization. So as a treasurer, of course, you will understand that it's off my chest, the burden I bear as a treasurer in this board. I was very pleased with that comment, of course. The second remark, the second interesting part is that because of COVID and because of the problems we faced last year, what we saw was that our expenditures were below budget because there were less travels, less travel costs, activities that would have otherwise bring costs for Icmci didn't occur. So we have had our savings. And what we decided after a lengthy discussion in the board, that and that is very special to me, that we will reimburse our IMCs. They get a return on the initially already paid fees for obvious reasons, because we are serving our members, of course. And I have had a lot of discussions with some of the IMCs who are facing real challenges. And we think as a board that the approximately 20,000 euro that we will return on the initial fees can be of help for the upcoming year for IMCs to invest in activities, to invest in revenues that will help them to overcome the problems they face during this pandemic era. And the third thing, which is quite interesting in the financial report, is that since we are a financially healthy organization, I am glad to announce that we can have a 0% increase or decrease for next fiscal year in the membership fees that have to be paid. And let me elaborate on one issue that came up this morning. Somebody asked, a return on initial fees, do we get money wired by Icmci? We come to money wiring and other money stuff later on in this agenda, but it will be a reduction from the upcoming billing process for the pays that are ahead of us, the fees that are ahead of us. And so you have to pay less because it will be deducted from the fees that come to you as soon as the new fiscal budget year starts. So I was very happy to present you this report as treasurer because of the conclusions we reached. And still, I am worried about what some of our IMCs have to face, because they see their members in difficulties paying their fees to their IMCs. And therefore, we as Icmci are really aware of the fact that as a board, we have to be of help to IMCs who have seen lots of troubles coming to them because of the pandemic. But here we are for you to help you out if you want. Well, that's it, Jeremy.
Okay, thank you for that, Jan Willem. I can see in the chat window there's several people have commented very positively on the news that the refund will be allocated to them. But we felt, as you say, as a board, that this was only the appropriate thing to do, that we hadn't incurred the expenditure, and therefore it was a positive suggestion in recognition. And Randy, it's a good question that you've asked about are the rebates allocated or proportionately or based on need? So I wonder, Jan Willem, if you could explain the formula or the basis for these rebates.
The return on the initial fees, as I like to call it, I do not know whether that's proper English, but a rebate sounds a kind of discount, and that's a discussion we had as well. It's not a discount; it's a rebate.
Rebate is good. Rebate is good.
Yeah,
in English. Yeah.
Okay, then I feel comfortable with that. Now, it is accordingly to the initial fees that you already have paid, and then proportionally the initial fees that are being paid, and you compare it with everything. Then there's a big scheme so that you get a return on what you already paid proportionally seen from the total budget of income.
There we go. So I hope that answers your question, Randy. I would say that you're not obliged to accept the rebate should you wish to donate it to the budget.
That's a good point, Jeremy. That's a discussion we had as well.
Indeed.
Since there are still very rich IMCs, if they don't want to have a discount or the rebate on their new bill, just let me know. We'll take care of it.
So it's a bit like when you pay for something on your card, the optional charity donation. It's just the same. You can elect to receive it or not. But we expect that most people will want to accept the rebate. So thank you for that, Jan Willem. And Randy, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thanks. That's great. Fantastic. Okay, so that's the Treasurer's report. And I can see, unless anybody has any specific questions about that, we could move quickly into the budget for next year. Jan Willem, if you could explain a bit about that, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Well, there is I looked it up. There's a very interesting sentence in the proposal for the upcoming budget. And it says in the proposed budget, we will follow the same philosophy of relying on variable revenue from our strategic initiatives. We intend to maintain core secretariat expenses at their current level. So we will be we will stay a professional organization, and we will build growth through the flexible revenue part of our budget. And that together with the point that I made just on the report, with a 0% increase of the fees that have to be paid, I think that's the main character of our new budget, and we think we can work eloquently on our strategic initiatives to have them prosper and stay in good health from a financial point of view as an international organization. So merely those different parts I just highlighted are the main focus on which we were able to fill in the sheets to build up a new scheme for our budget for the upcoming fiscal years.
Fantastic, thank you.
If there are any questions about it, happy to answer. And of course, Rima can help us if you want some more detailed information. Can also be done in the chat if you want.
Okay, thank you. So I can see that there's not much going on in the chat window about this, and there don't appear to be any questions coming from the floor. So we'll continue. If anybody does have a question on reflection later on in the meeting, by all means, put it in the chat window, and we'll do our best to answer it as we go along. So that's resolution 3. That what we hope you can feel okay to do is accept that and vote for it in your voting at the end of the session. Now, resolution 4, we found ourselves interestingly here that we have a problem with our banking, and Jan Willem will explain the details of this. The reason that there's a resolution here is that we discovered from the bylaws that if we want to appoint someone to act as an officer, compliance officer, to manage our banking process in Switzerland, which is where we're looking to move our banking to, and Jan Willem and Dwight will explain why, we need to request the delegates to give us authority to do this. That's an aspect of the bylaws which we are seeking to modify in resolution 6, which will come up in a moment. But as for resolution 4, what we're looking to do is ask you to grant the board authority to appoint a banking compliance officer with some very strict conditions, which you can see on the screen right now. And if I hand over to Dwight, Dwight can perhaps explain the background to this. If you would, Dwight, that would be helpful.
Certainly. Banking regulations have been have become increasingly tighter over the last few years because of money laundering laws that are being put in place and global regulations. And our organization, being a virtual organization and transferring money from all different parts of the world to other different parts of the world, brings with it a lot of compliance as a result. So we were in the unusual situation of being fired by our bank earlier this year, in the early part of the year. So our bank has been in the Netherlands for a considerable amount of time, but they found that the compliance requirements for our organization vis-a-vis the amount of money we put through, which is where they make their profit, just didn't make business sense for them. So we have until the end of this year. Thank you, Jan Villam, for his very good interventions with the bank, because they wanted to give us a much shorter notice period, but he convinced them to go until the end of this calendar year. So as we look for banking, and believe me, we spent many hours looking for the best banking situation, we find that it is a requirement from banks now that if you're going to have a bank account, you need to have someone that is resident in the country that will be accountable for that account. It's just the way it is nowadays. So we need to appoint someone who would be part of the staff organization, who would report to RIMA in that respect, but also give reports to the board with respect to managing our bank account in Switzerland. We choose Switzerland because that's where our organization is licensed as a Verein, and it just makes sense to have our banking in the same country where we're organized as an organization. So we want to do this. As Jeremy mentioned, this should be under the authority of the board, because the board should have the authority to appoint staff officers. But in a change we made when we modified the 2016 bylaws to the 2018 bylaws, we made a change to reflect the fact that the treasurer and the secretary are no longer elected directly, but are now appointed by the board. And we added the phrase that they would be appointed by the board from within the board. And unfortunately, that phrase "from within the board" also applies to all staff officers. So we're not even actually allowed under our bylaws to appoint RIMA, which is, of course, ludicrous. So we need the delegates to approve this resolution. Otherwise, it would have been just something that we would have done as a matter of course. So it's not a big deal, but we really do need you to support that so we can continue our banking and get that set up in Switzerland.
Okay, thank you, Dwight. So I hope that explains what's behind this. It was an unfortunate surprise, I think, is probably the best way of putting it, when we learnt that the bank was not keen to have us as a customer. And this is a necessary solution that we have to implement here. When I come on to the bylaws modifications, I'll point you towards the relevant bylaw where we've had to make a modification to permit this to happen, so that in future the board can make decisions about how to appoint officers like this without the need to come back to all the delegates every time to ask your permission. So I hope you find it that this is okay. I can see that there's a few comments in the chat. I hope, Flavio, that we've answered your question about the role of the banking compliance officer. And from anybody else, if there's any other thoughts or questions on this, please again put them in the chat window, or stick your hand up and we'll answer a question. So thank you for that one. So let me move on to resolution 5.
Jeremy, if I may say one.
Sure. Sorry.
Sorry. No, I don't mind. This morning, Dwight made a nice metaphorical observation that as Icmci, we are very, very fit to become a real mafia organization with a money laundering machine which is enormous. So we have a capacity which is incredible, but we will stick to management consulting. That is what we will do.
Yes, I think, and I hope anyone listening to the recording of this meeting ensures that they understand your comment in the appropriate way. So yes, the important thing is it's actually quite a risky enterprise for a bank, an organization like ours with outlets in many countries handling international transactions. So we can understand why the compliance people in banks are not interested in us. Thank you very much. Fortunately, we have found a Swiss bank that is interested and will help us out. So that's great. So let me move on to resolution 5. Dwight mentioned earlier on that the board will be considering this coming year developing a strategy to look at how we can interact better with global stakeholders as Icmci ourselves. We know that some institutes are very good at doing this, and what we're seeking to do is not replace that in any way, but to act in a global way to consider how Icmci should engage with global stakeholders such as development banks, standards bodies, multinational consultancies, and so on, in a way that actually is integrated with our mission, which is, of course, to represent and have progress for the profession of consultancy as a whole. It's one of our weaknesses, as we know, that we have a great membership across the world with many countries involved as institutes, but actually the number of individual members in those institutes is only a small percentage of the management consultancy industry and profession as a whole. And if we want to represent the profession, we have to consider how do we engage with some of these other stakeholders. So this coming year, the board will be carrying out a project to identify the best way of doing this. And our intention, and thanks Gabriel for your question, is absolutely not to conflict with what IMCs are doing at their country level, but actually to support that and to integrate what some IMCs are doing. We know very well, and I know it's the case in many countries, that people do this very well, but there are also countries that don't have the resources or ability or connections to do this. And that's why we need to have a program and a process to do this at an international level. So I understand the question, Gabriel, so I hope that answers it. Our intention is absolutely not to conflict in any way, but what we don't know at the moment is who all these stakeholders are, what's the best way of engaging with them, how to involve local IMCs as well as these international stakeholders, how to deal, for example, with stakeholders who exist in countries where there isn't an institute, for instance. And there are many of those as well. So we will be presenting back to you next year, so at this meeting next year, a strategy for dealing with global stakeholders, having consulted with them and with all of you as well. We want to make sure that we consult widely with all the institute members to understand the best way, as far as you're concerned, for us as an organization to deal with this issue, to improve our ability to represent the profession globally. So that's why we've put this resolution forward. It's not for you to accept a particular strategy because we haven't developed it yet. It's for you to note that we're going to do this, and we hope that you will support us in doing so and vote for the resolution so that we can continue to develop our organization going forward into the future. That's the purpose of this resolution. So any questions or comments on that, again, please put them forward in the chat window or raise your hand and we'll be happy to answer those. Let's move on then, since I can't see any particular questions apart from the one that Gabriel put up. Thank you, Gabriel. Is the last one. Do we have, here we are. Yes, thanks, Alexandra. we will have a working group, but we haven't got it yet. So I think my feeling is, and I'm speaking personally here, it's not a board decision that we've made in any respect yet, is that it would be a very good idea to form a working group with someone on the board, people, delegates, for example, from different countries to participate. So it seems, Alexandra, that you might be volunteering to participate in this. So I've made a note of that. Thank you very much. We'd be very welcome to have you on that working group. But yes, I think it's important. It's not just the board themselves or ourselves. We'll just sit here and come up with an answer. It will definitely be involve contributions from as many people as want to make a contribution. So so thank you, Alexandra, and you're a welcome founder member of that working group. So thank you. I hope you don't mind that, of course. That's great. Well, precisely, that's fantastic. So we know, and it's a good point, we know that within our delegate body and more widely, we have people who are doing this very thing, who are working with international stakeholders who understand how they network and how they provide service. So I think your knowledge there and connections, Alexandra, will be really valuable. Thank you for that. Okay, let me move on then to resolution 6. And Donald, yeah, that's great. We've got your name down as well. Thank you, fantastic. Let me move on to resolution 6. I mentioned earlier that the bylaws contain some text which is a bit out of date for virtual meetings. We also had the issue about our authority, the board's authority to appoint officers where we need them to carry out roles such as the banking role. So what we've done is go through the bylaws, and you will have received a copy of these in advance with red text and some crossings out to update them to reflect the kind of new reality that we have right now. We didn't receive many questions or comments from delegates in advance of the meeting about these modifications, these updates. So my hope is that you're all perfectly happy with this. We haven't changed the basic principles of the organization, how it works, all of those remain the same. It's purely some modifications to make the language a bit easier to understand, to deal with electronic voting, and to clarify the board's authority to appoint officers. We've also harmonized, if that's the right word, the notice periods for resolutions. On reading the bylaws, we found that depending on the nature of the resolution, it could be 21 days in advance, 30 days in advance, or 45 days in advance. And we felt that that was unnecessarily complicated. So we've changed it so that they're all the same. So we hope that you'll be happy to accept these modifications, updates to the bylaws. And I would mention that one of the bylaws which we are governed by says that if we want to change the bylaws, we need a 2/3 majority of the delegates to vote for it. And we're certainly not proposing to change that in any respect. But what it does mean is that we have 59 delegates this year. So we need 40 of you to vote positively to accept these modifications, updates to the bylaws. Otherwise, we can't go ahead with them. So I'd urge you, if you're content with these modifications, please cast your vote, because otherwise we'll have to chase you after the meeting to get up to our relevant 40 number. Otherwise, we won't be able to move forward with the new arrangements. So please, if you vote for nothing else, please vote to change the bylaws, because otherwise I'll have to, it will be Khuzema and Rima who end up doing it, chasing you to cast your vote in the days after the poll closes, which is in about 12 hours time. Okay, so I've covered everything there, and I haven't seen that there's any particular questions about the bylaws, so I hope you're all content with those updates. Please cast your vote. You've now seen all of the resolutions, so you're able now to log on and click the link that was in the chat window earlier, or the link that came with your email, to vote for the resolutions. That ends my contribution to the meeting. Rather tedious and boring, I know, but it has to be done that way. So thank you, Dwight, and so on, for your time. And I'm going to hand back to Dwight to carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate that. It is important that we have full transparency with respect to the resolutions that we're asking you to pass. And I thank you for that clarity that you've brought to everyone. And thank you, those of you who ask questions, just to make sure that we're getting the right information out to you. So that brings me to the previously hyped by me exciting part of the agenda, past the resolutions, to Nick Warren. Nick is the chair of our Professional Standards Committee. The committee has been doing a lot of really hard work over the past 2 or 3 years, actually, in terms of upgrading and ensuring that our professional standards are leading edge. And the latest product is the Competency Framework as part of the CMC handbook. So I'll hand it over to you, Nick, and thank you for that good work and that of your committee to have this in place for us to walk us through and give us some insights into what's changing.
Okay, thanks, Dwight. Yes, it's not often we hear standards being referred to as interesting and exciting, but I'll do my best. Yeah, so we are basically at this meeting launching our updated new competence framework in 2021. But I'd like to say that the competence framework is only just one part of a package of standards and guidelines that we have within Icmci, which all work towards supporting the vision and mission of Icmci as a global organization, the global organization representing the management consultancy profession, in terms of what our member IMC member consultants do in terms of improving social and economic conditions around the world. So, Zamer, if we can have the next slide, please. Yeah, so you know, our job with the competence framework and all the other elements of the package that go around it is to fulfill the vision and mission that you see on the screen now. And the work of the Professional Standards Committee is to assist the board in developing those standards and maintaining them, the standards and the guidelines, with the aim of promoting excellence in our consulting profession. And that includes you know, awards like the CMC award, certification, and other qualifications, and importantly, the assessment processes that go around them. Now, the total package we're talking about starts with the CMC manual, which is that document that Dwight referred to earlier on. And that is, if you like, the base document that deals with the governance and management of the member IMCs. And then allied to that CMC manual, there are a number of appendices that deal more with the elements to do with individual consultants, like the competence framework, which is linked into the CMC award, the code of conduct for professional and ethical conduct for consultants, body of knowledge, and so on. So although I'm going to talk mainly about the competence framework now, do want everybody to be aware that there is this whole package of documents which goes together to form what Icmci does in terms of developing, nurturing the reputation of the profession globally. So if we could move on, Kuzena, please, to the next slide. Just to give you an illustration of the three main components that we're going to be talking about now. First of all, the competence framework, which, as I said, is the basis for the CMC award. So consultants are assessed against the competence framework, and if they reach a certain level within the framework, then they can be awarded the CMC, Certified Management Consultant Award. The second major component of our package is our Code of Conduct, which covers professional behavior and ethical behavior. And we have a set of core values within Icmci, which are embodied in our Code of Conduct, governing what we expect as the behavior of consultants. Now, this morning, the feedback we got when I made this presentation was actually very strongly in favor of majoring on the Code of Conduct and ethical behavior, which I think is a fair view, given the way that our profession has sometimes, or some members of our profession, should I say, have not acted in the way they should have done. And in today's world, ethics are becoming more and more to the fore in terms of how we deal with each other. As consultants, we bear a great responsibility when we go into our client organizations to do the right thing for them, because we can make or break them. But equally, we bear a lot of responsibility to the society around us and the environment in which we live. So we have, again, updated our Code of Conduct to include all those other elements within it as well, with special reference to the UN, United Nations Society Development Goals, which are 17, if you like, 17 goals that the UN has set in order to preserve the world in which we live for the future. So they're very much part of our Code of Conduct now. And then the last major component, obviously, is the process of doing consultancy and the ISO 20700 standard, which Icmci drove the development of and was published in 2017. And we have within Icmci our own project self-declaration checklist, which is seen as the best way to actually apply the standard in practice in a consultancy project. So that's an overview of our package. If we can look at just each one of those in a little more detail, because over the next slide, if we can have a look at the competence framework, which I'm sorry, I'm being disturbed by my two grandsons who are making faces to me outside the window. So, excuse my expression. The Icmci competence framework, it is the collection of knowledge, skills, and experience that a management consultant shows at various levels, and at a certain level, a consultant demonstrating the right sort of competence, it can achieve the CMC award. And the framework looks at 4 aspects of the consultancy work we do. First of all, the necessity to have business insight and aptitude, to know how business works, to be able to apply that knowledge. Secondly, consultancy practice capabilities, actually how to do the job, how to use the tools and the methods that are involved. Thirdly, consultative behavior, interpersonal behavior, how we deal with our clients, how we manage our clients, how we work with our colleagues, and so on. And then lastly, ethics and professional conduct. Again, I mean, this is spelled out in a lot of detail in the code of conduct, but also within the competence framework, we see statements of how a consultant should behave ethically and professionally. So if we can move on, Kazema, please, to the next slide, which just gives you an overview of what we're looking at in our code of conduct. Previously, our code has concentrated very much on our responsibility to clients, but now we've included all those other elements of responsibility that consultants have to the society around us, to impact on the environment, the responsibility we have to the organizations for whom we work, to uphold their reputation, to follow their values, to our colleagues, the fellow consultants we work with, to support them, possibly to apply coaching and mentoring, to be a listening ear. And then lastly, to the profession itself, and particularly to Icmci as the body representing the profession in the world. So the code deals with all of those aspects and sets out the expected behaviors and actions that we expect of consultants, and all consultants within Icmci and the member institutes, of course, have to sign up to a code of conduct, whether it's the IMC's own or the Icmci's code. We all need to sign up to the proper code of ethics and professional conduct. And now, Kazema, if we could move on to ISO 20700, the third element of our package, and particularly the self-declaration checklist, which Icmci has developed as the best practice means of applying the standard in a consultancy project. The checklist is comprehensive in that it covers all of the areas of the standard, and indeed, because of that, covers every aspect that a consultant needs to look at with a client in planning, executing, and closing off a project. It's universal in that it can be applied to any type of project and any type of client. It's flexible in that it does not dictate how a consultant does the job, but it provides a guideline covering all the aspects that need to be considered to do a good job for a client. And it's beneficial not just for consultants, but for clients as well, because it provides a common framework so that the client and the consultant reach a joint understanding of what's going to happen in the project, what the expected outcomes are, what's going to be delivered, and so on and so on. So it prevents the sort of misunderstanding that we've seen in so many projects over the years, and it provides an evaluation aid for the client, so they can actually evaluate the performance of the consultant who's done the job for them. Have they done the job according to the way it should be done? So that's an overview of the three elements of our package. Now let's have a look at the competence framework in detail. Kazema, if we can have the next slide now. And just a few words about how the competence framework is set up. First of all, it is a descriptive document, not prescriptive. That is, it does not tell a consultant what they have to do, but the wording in it describes the sort of competence level that is expected of a consultant. In other words, it's written very much in the way that the assessor will look at a CMC candidate and say, from what the candidate is telling us and from what they've written in their portfolio, how does this match up with the description of the way a competent consultant will behave. So it describes the principles and the knowledge, the skills and experience that a competent management consultant demonstrates. It's gender neutral, so all personal pronouns are non-gender specific. It's all they and their and theirs. And the framework comprises 3 achievement levels: foundation, CMC, and professional leader. Now, we've always had those 3 levels in our competence framework. The 2014 version actually had those levels, but they were set out in a separate document to the framework, what was called a range statement document. We've now combined those 2 documents together. So our new competence framework now includes statements that apply to foundation, CMC, and profession leader level. And we'll look in detail at how it's structured in just a minute. But I need to have a word about the profession leader level, because this is something that's not really come to the fore before now. We've looked at CMC as being the core of our competence framework. And of course, that middle level, the CMC level, is the competence level that a consultant has to achieve in order to get the CMC award. But we decided some years ago that we wanted to have a level above that enabled maybe IMCs to recognize amongst their members those who had actually moved beyond just the competence level of CMC and were actually providing leadership in the profession. Maybe it was that leadership could come through being a senior partner or a director in a consultancy firm. Maybe it's they're taking a lead on the academic front in terms of providing thought leadership and reference works for consultancy. Whatever, it was just put there as a means of being able to recognize that there was more to leadership in the profession than just the competence level at CMC. So it's there as a possibility for IMCs to use in terms of recognition beyond CMC. And of course, we've had to make some updates to the framework in order to really bring it up to date with the way consultancy is being done today. Dwight was talking earlier on about the VUCA world we live in, about the need for transformational capability. And so our framework has to be relevant to the way that consultancy is done today and the demands of clients. So here are the things that we have either reinforced or introduced new to this version of the framework. First of all, the basic IT skills for effective communication and efficient administration. We're talking here about the office applications, emails, social media, those sort of things that are absolutely essential now for consultants to do their job properly. They were not very strongly brought out in the previous framework, so we've now bolstered those in this new one. But on top of that, we've also introduced competence about the awareness of and the ability to apply the latest elements of technology, particularly in the diagnostics and solution development for clients. We're talking here about things like artificial intelligence or machine learning, the Internet of Things, absolutely essential parts of diagnostic and solutions for clients. So we're expecting consultants to have competence within those areas nowadays. Also, we've put more emphasis in the new framework on interpersonal skills, elements of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, social awareness, awareness of the interaction of the people we're dealing with. These are key skills for consultants nowadays in working effectively with clients and with colleagues. So we've built things into the new framework about that. I talked earlier on about societal awareness, particularly in our code of conduct, well, also in the competence framework. We've built in elements of competence for consultants about being aware of societal responsibility, of environmental impact, not just in the way they operate, but in the advice they give to clients about the way they should operate as well, about the triple bottom line, for instance. We built in areas of competence about holistic and transformational thinking, the need for consultants to retain the big picture, which puts the work they do into context within the client organization, and the need within our VUCA world for transformational thinking in consultancy. And then lastly, we've made sure that we've integrated the competence framework with the code of conduct and with ISO 20700. So we've got a fully integrated package of guidance and standards for best practice, excellent consultancy in today's world. Now, if we can move on, because I know my time will be running short and the clock's running. The structure of the competence framework, I mentioned the four aspects before: business insight, practice capability, consultative behavior, and ethics. Those are the four main headings within our framework. And beneath each of those, there are subheadings that deal with the specifics under the main headings. In the next slide, if we can have that, Kazema, I can show you in more detail what the structure of the new framework looks like. At the top, that faint blue box, you see the main heading, business insight and aptitude. Underneath in the blue type, you see the first subheading under that main heading, which in this case is client specialism and sectorial knowledge. So knowledge of the client, knowledge of your own consulting specialism, whether it's finance or IT or whatever, and knowledge of the sector in which you operate and in which your client operates. So, and then in the table itself, we have a paragraph number. We have a description of the competence we're looking at here, which is in this case client business insight. We have a subsection number, A1.1, A1.2, and the competence that we're looking at, client understanding in this case, and then 3 levels of description to say, how would we describe the behavior and actions of a consultant at foundation level? Those that are still learning, those who are not yet able to operate independently, they still need supervision and coaching and mentoring. How would we expect a consultant to behave at CMC level? Fully independent, able to operate without any supervision. And how would we expect a consultant at the profession leader level to behave? What extra aspects are they providing as leadership within our profession? So that's how the framework looks. If we move to the next slide, Kazema, please, we'll just see the next main heading, which is practice capabilities. Again, set out in exactly the same way. What do we expect at foundation level? What do we expect at CMC level? What would we expect to see at professional leader level? The next slide talks about consultative behavior. And again, here We're talking about a lot of those areas of emotional intelligence. How self-aware are we? How do we manage ourselves? How do we manage others, and so on? What are our leadership qualities? Again, at the three levels that we're looking at. And then the next slide, please, Cosima, which is finally the ethics and professional conduct. And this, of course, links heavily into, firstly, the UN SDGs, the social development goals, and also into our code of conduct within ICMCI. And again, we have the heading, subheading, the various clauses, and the descriptions of what we're expecting. So we're looking for awareness and understanding. At the CMC level, we're looking for more. We're looking for good, successful practice. And at the profession leader level, we're looking for something even more yet in terms of providing thought leadership within the profession. A peer recognition that this consultant stands out as being a leader, a role model that people can look up to. Okay, so, that's the background of the framework. That's what it looks like. What happens next? Well, I'm pleased to say the board approved the work, which all the splendid members of my committee have done over the last 2 or 3 years, and will now be published after this annual meeting. Of course, there will be a period of transition, because assessors will need to be trained in the new framework and the new code. Consultants will need to learn all about it. They'll have to start providing their portfolios of evidence in a slightly different way. So there will be transition period. There will be a lot of help. And I'm committing the future PSC into help here. For those institutes that would like some help in how they make the transition. But I'm sure the committee will be pleased to help. So just to round off with the final slide, please, Cosima, to remind you that what we're looking at here is a package of standards and guidelines that aim to take our profession into a level of excellence for the future years. And to build the reputation of ICMCI as the global role model of good, excellent practice consultancy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think many of you have heard during my term saying I'm not the standards guy, but I still find it exciting because it is leading edge in terms of how we keep our profession as good as it can be, and it lays a great foundation for those next steps. So thank you for that presentation, Nick. So we're right on time, maybe a couple of minutes behind, but very close. I'd like to now call on Soren, who's the chair of the Nominations and Succession Planning Committee, and he will give us the next exciting event, which is the announcement of the results of the election process.
Thank you very much, Dwight. You started by saying that this is your last intervention as chair, and you are going to move as immediate past chair. This is my last intervention as immediate past chair. I think that you had enough of me, so it's time to change, as I said already. Most probably chairing the NSPC, and especially the last mission, communicate the results to the candidates, was, I think, the most difficult task that I had in ICMCI, and you will understand very easily why. First, I want to thank to the NSPC with the components now is Lydia Goh, it's, you know, the wonderful lady from Singapore. We have Randy Baldwin, which is around here, it's somewhere here. And we have Alfred Harr from Austria. Of course, we have the chair of ICMCI. It's still Dwight for a few minutes. And the immediate past chair, which is chairing the NSPC, that's me. On top of that, we have, of course, Rima and Kuzaima. We became a little bit too linked to this secretariat, so we cannot survive without that. And it's obvious that NSPC is not acting only once a year. Is trying to act all the time, and I hope that with the great support of our members, we've been able to stimulate the interest of being part of the game. It's obvious that we had the most challenging elections we ever had, at least as I know. So we had, for the board, we had 4 candidates for each position, and we have, of course, 2 candidates for the chair. Both candidates were excellent. What to say? It's the best that we could find now, and both of them were my friends, so it was very difficult to tell them that only one has won. And it's most probably you have heard, because this is not the first discussion that we had after this morning, but NSPC, it's a committee that should report to the delegates. So I'm making my report to the delegates, saying that the newly elected chair of Icmci, elected from the vote by the votes of the delegates, we had 47 votes out of 59. So it's enough also for Jeremy to pass his resolutions. I'm sure that he's going to make as good as we have done with the elections. With your help, of course. So the Robert Bodenstein is the newly elected chair. And who said Peter? Peter is saying something, but we don't care.
Congratulations,
And,
that's what I said.
the same. I had the same respect for both of them. The candidate, the other candidate was Jan Villam Kradolfer. You see him in front of his library, and was really very, very difficult. And it's also difficult now to speak about the results of this. But I'm sure that the organization will go ahead. Regarding the board, I've told you we have 2 positions to be replaced. Thanks God I'm leaving. The other one is Kyung from South Korea. And the 2 that counted most of the highest number of votes. I'm reading them in alphabetical order, so don't try to say who has got more of the 2. Are Tamara Abdel Jaber, and the other one is this gentleman that told us a lot about ethics and professionalism. That's Nick Ward. So I want to welcome them to the board, wishing them to work as much as they can. Good luck, and keep going, because this organization deserves your efforts. So that's it. My last statement, you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to withdraw me. Is for the first time I've told Kuzaima, I was so happy when I got an invitation for the board meeting tomorrow morning, and I have rejected it. By mistake, I've got it. I don't know why it was that. And the next step, I realized that I'm a member in some groups that I will not be part of, the WhatsApp group of ICMCI board. So I'm going to live there. And I want to thank all of you. And actually, I have to thank life, because I had a chance to meet and talk and work and share excellent time with all of you. That's it. So I stop myself. I don't see you very well, even if I have my glasses on, because it's something that acts. Good luck, take care, don't be afraid. I'm scrutinizing what you are doing, and of course I'm going to criticize, but inside, not outside.
Thank you,
Dwight, if you would allow me to make a personal comment.
Absolutely, please go ahead, Jan Villam.
Yeah, first I'd like to congratulate my dear friend Robert with his new appointment as chair of the new board. And I wish him and the new team lots of luck. And to open up the opportunities for him to build his own team, I want to tell you that I will resign as of per today. So this is also my last official task for ICMCI board. and I will step down as your treasurer. I told this NSPC earlier already, and I've informed the board yesterday evening, so I will make the way free for Robert and his team to find their way to let ICMCI prosper in future times. So it is with great happiness about the last 10 years active in the ICMCI community, in the last 4 years in the board, that I will focus on what you are doing as well, like Soren. So Soren and I are going to drink a beer while watching what the board will do in future times. Thank you so much, Dwight.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I will have a few words to say in a few moments as well, but let me give the floor I'd like to remark on those comments as well, Jan Villam. Thank you for that. But first, let's give the chair the floor to the incoming chair. I've got about 2 or 3 minutes left in my role as chair, and it'll be handed over to Robert. So Robert, would you like to say a few words to the delegates?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for this result. Thank you for your work, Soren and the NSPC. Now it comes in my mind, very authentic. But on my screen, Soren and Jan Villam, they are close. On the left, on the right side, and you look a little bit like the two guys from the Muppet Show. It's and the way you saluted, it reminds me a little bit. But no kidding. I think Soren, I cannot imagine being in the board without you, because I've always been in the board, having you in the board too. I don't know when you started working in the board, but yeah. I don't know how to say thank you, and I don't know how to say thank you to Jan Villam, who has been volunteering in the board for the last 4 years, and we must find a way to cheer and to elaborate on that face to face in some bar or somewhere else. And also I want to say thank you to Dr. Hahn, who is leaving the board, but he's not with us. I didn't see him on the attendance list, so I will send him in a separate way. And Dwight, I think that is really very sharp. Dwight is not leaving the board, so we can still grab when we need you. But the last 3 years, they really... Everybody's talking about the booster vaccine, and they really brought us forward as ICMCI and as the board, and you as the chair. You really showed your leadership, and it was great working with you in my role as board member, and you as chair. And now it turned around. That hasn't changed. So you're still here, thank God, and you already promised if we need you, we can get hold of you. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much, Robert. So the final closing duty that I have as chair is to award some certificates of appreciation. This is not nearly as much fun as it is in a face-to-face meeting where we can give you a good certificate and then adjourn for a beer afterwards. But we do have PDFs which will go to each of you. And I just want to say a few words in front of the delegates to recognize your service. And the first, of course, goes to Jan Villam. Thank you, Jan Villam, for your service. I didn't know you for the entire 10 years of your service, but I met you as a delegate in Johannesburg for the first time, and we have collaborated off and on throughout that. You've been a delegate, you've been the chair of your institute, you were elected to the board. When I approached you to take an office, you said, no, I want to be a director at large and do my work. But when push came to shove and we really needed a treasurer, you stepped up and you've done a great job in these past 2 years as our treasurer. So I want to thank you very much for your service, and please, when you receive the certificate of appreciation, mount it in a place, because we'll be thinking of you and it'll help you to think of us. The second one I have is for Soren. Soren is, as he said, is now finishing his term as past chair and leaving the board. Soren and I have also had a long relationship, because my first ever introduction to ICMCI was in the breakthrough strategy, and Soren and I were both on the finance committee, and he was chairing the governance committee, and I got involved in both of those. And then I followed in his footsteps because he was a director of the board, then the treasurer, then the chair, and then the past chair. So following exactly that way, and you've been an inspiration to me and a support to me all the way through. So thank you, and you can be sure that we will find you, and we'll be collaborating with you in other ways as we go forward. The third one is to Nick. Nick has finished his term as chair of PSC. Thank you. You saw in living color the work that they've been doing in terms of the competency framework and the CMC manual. It's only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that that committee has done under Nick's leadership. So thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be able to give you this certificate of appreciation, and know that you're joining us on the board, and we can make use of your talent in other ways as we go forward. Keong, it has been mentioned, he's not unfortunately here, but it is his end of his term. He's spent 6 years, 2 3-year terms on the board, and has done excellent service and a liaison to multiple different committees. So I will thank Keong personally, and we'll get that certificate to him. And then finally, Glenn, my friend Glenn, the person who phoned me when I had just recently semi-retired at my cottage and said, Dwight, we need you to do a couple of tasks for us for CMC Canada. Would you volunteer? Which was the breakthrough strategy work, and look where it's gotten me. So Glenn, I have to thank you for this journey that I'm on, and just recognize the excellent work that you've been doing as the chair of the membership committee. This is the end of his term as membership committee, and also the end of his term as delegate for Canada. I'm just scanning here, and I think Glenn may have had to sign off already. So I will. Already, yes. Yes, so I'll get this to him and tell him about the words that I said to him in his absence. So thank you all for all of that. We've gone 4 minutes past. I apologize for that, but thank you very much for your attention, for the excellent questions you've asked, and for the votes. Please, Jeremy just sent me a text that we're short a few yet. So if you haven't voted yet, please do vote as soon as you log off. We really need this. And Johanna is nodding that we need you to turn on your cameras if you'd like your picture taken, please, for the social media that here we are, annual meeting of delegates of ICMCI.
And we conclude 10 hours and a half virtual meeting. So
yes.
Okay, I'm taking one more, please. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. And thank you to all delegates. Have a great rest of your day, whatever time zone you're in. And we'll be in touch as time goes on. Thank you very much all. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.